Jack Ben belly air, and there you are, happy landing on a chocolate bar.
All right, folks. Of course, that's the one and only Shirley Temple. I remember as a kid watching Shirley Temple movies and a little kid and loving them. And you got to still love them. Of course, Shirley Temple passed away at the age of 85. It was announced today. We are joined once again by Rick Unger, Forbes magazine, who brought in here to talk about a few things before we get to our guest, Nicolle Wallace, including Shirley Temple. Now, you know, I remember her as the entertainer. She later went on, of course, I know her as the ambassador, United Nations affiliated ambassador and all that. And, you know, she was very politically oriented throughout her life, and Shirley Temple Black is how she came to be known and passed away as. But Rick, you know, she was more than just a little cute girl starring in the movies, probably the biggest movie star in the world when she was that age. But she helped this country through the Great Depression.
Absolutely true. She was a huge box office star in her time. But what has always amazed me about this woman was her ability to reinvent herself at a very young age. She was only 22 years old when she gave up the movie business and made a purposeful move towards the political world. Remarkable. And it's particularly in the times that we're talking about, when you think back to how unlikely that was. You've truly got to admire this woman for the abilities that she had and what she did in her life.
And I think it was FDR who said that, who credited her for helping the country survive and get through those terrible times.
Well, it's the power of movies. And, you know, people like to criticize movies in Hollywood a great deal, but I got to tell you, we've always been, you know, as you know, Steve, I came from that world, and we were always fascinated how our business, the movie business, and quite frankly, the tavern business, the liquor business, always did better in difficult times because the country's always looking for a release and something to kind of give it a little boost up during tough economic times. Shirley Temple, you know, reigned in those years of the Depression and really did. Franklin Roosevelt was correct. She did a great deal to lift the spirits of her country.
Yeah, no, she absolutely did. All right, we're going to be rejoined by Rick Unger with the panel later in the hour when we are joined by also David Yonkman, Republican strategist. But right now, I will say hello to our guest who I've been trying to get a hold of for a while, and it's because, you know, you ever have a piece of paper and you lose it? I lost it. And then one day there it was, and I said, oh my goodness. Let's say hello to Nicolle Wallace, former communications chief for George W. Bush, senior advisor for the McCain Palin campaign. And you see her on MSNBC, on Morning Joe. Hello, Nicolle.
Well, that lost piece of paper is the story of my life. If I could find every piece of paper I ever lost, I think I could, you know, rule the universe.
Well, let me show. Let me. I shouldn't do this, but let me show the world right now. Keep the camera on me because I'm going to show the world. This is my wallet. And actually, this is my wallet. See the rubber bands? That's my wallet. So I am so organized. You can't see it, but it's a bunch of stuff held together by a rubber band. And even when I go to get my hair cut, the girl always says, do you need another wallet? And she pulls out a rubber band.
Well, do you know why this happened? This happened because everybody wants to give you a card. You go to a bookstore and they want to give you a card for free. You go to the grocery store, and this was the beginning of the end for me. Everybody wanted to give me a card to shop at.
Well, that's because you're married, of course, but you're so beautiful that everybody wants to give you a card.
No, it has nothing to do with that. I just buy a lot of diapers, a lot of detergent, and a lot of books.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I can't picture you in the supermarket buying diapers and detergent, but I guess everybody does.
Oh my God, come to my neighborhood. That's where I am every night around 11 when I realize I only have one left. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on here, and let's talk about the latest moves here that really are dominating the news today, and one has to deal, of course, with John Boehner saying he's capitulating. I just had Tim Yuelskamp on right before you in the previous hour, and he's really ticked off. He said that Nancy Pelosi is running the floor of the House. He figures maybe 20 Republicans will vote today on that clean debt ceiling bill, and the rest will vote against it, and he's ticked off.
Look, I think John Boehner deserves a, whatever that highest civilian honor is, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think he has a very difficult job. I think he recognizes that the more conservative members of his caucus represent the views and opinions of Americans who have every right to have those views represented in Congress. But I think that Speaker Boehner is caught between the desire to govern. I mean, I really believe that he is there to not just pass laws to pass laws, but to keep the government running and to get things done. So I think that I admire every step he's taken. I think even during the government shutdown last fall, and you and I were on Morning Joe together after that, but I think that through all of this, I think that he's been strong, and I think he's been honest, and I think he's been as transparent as he can be when you're trying to give members the space to do what they want. But I think he's in a really tough position. I don't think sympathy is the right word, because I don't pity him at all. I admire him, but I have a lot of empathy with what he's wrestling with.
I know what you could do. You could maybe send him your card.
Exactly. and he'd listen, I'm sure, like everyone else. I mean, what do you think? What do you think he should do?
Well, I'm from the other school. I think they need to stand tough. I do think this is a tough battle to pick because you know how it works, or I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I think the last time around it was not the Republicans who shut down the government. It was a president who broke tradition and would not negotiate even the slightest little iota of anything, and said too bad, and let the government come to the brink, as they like to say on the left, of default, which never would have happened anyway. But over what? Over not willing to delay the medical device tax for a year? Other presidents had constantly given in on debt ceiling negotiations and whatnot, or not given in, but at least talked. So they're dealing with the president who's politically in big trouble, with a party politically in big trouble, and they would love for the media to tell the world, oh, the evil Republicans shut the government down again.
Yeah, but I'm going to quote Don Rumsfeld here, you know, who said that you go to war with the army you got, not the army that you wish you got. I mean, I think you engage in these sorts of legislative battles with the landscape that you've got, not the landscape you wish you've got. And the truth is that Republicans will be blamed, not just by the media, which we can just close our eyes and, and predict that without much thought, but will be judged by too many voters as responsible for these things. And I think that when we have such important elections on the horizon, these midterm elections are much more important to our party than theirs. We have much more at stake. We have seen, I think, the wreckage caused by having a Democrat, not just any Democrat, but an extreme progressive liberal in the Oval Office. I think our only recourse now is to I think further solidify our majority in the House and to try to take back the Senate. And it matters. It matters how our party is viewed when it comes to these big Washington food fights.
All right,
well, I'm going to dig in and entrench myself on Speaker Boehner's side and say that, again, I applaud what he's trying to do, which is to hold to some principles, but to not have everything shut down, because he knows that it's our party that's going to take the lump.
Then why do I have a feeling I know where you're going to fall on this? And this was...
am I that much of a cliche?
No. Based on what you just said, I could predict. Plus, I watch you. I watch you in the morning. So here's what Rand Paul told, and let me just make sure I'm doing this. Yeah, Rand Paul was on our show last week, and he made some news. He called, well, here's what he said, and this is about Bill Clinton, cut 22.
Really depicts what's really gross and wrong with, workplace harassment.
Would you call him an unsavory character?
Yeah, I mean, a predator, a sexual predator, basically, repetitive. There's dozens, or at least a half a dozen public women who've come forward. Some of them did sue in the job place. I think the Paula Jones suit, Mr. Clinton ended up paying nearly $1 million.
And it started when I complimented him for bringing up the hypocrisy. If you recall, what was the Republican convention called back in 2012? A convention of rapists, some on the left called them, because of the fact that, because of that one remark by one congressman who apologized, the war on women. And then a couple of weeks later, they bowed down to Bill Clinton, who was accused of everything you could imagine when it came to women, and the hypocrisy is just, unbelievable. So Paul brought it up, and now, he's taking some heat for continuing this. Do you think he should shut up?
Well, I don't think that Rand Paul has to answer to me. I don't think he has to answer to the media. I think he has a very loyal and a very sophisticated and intelligent constituency. The people that want to see Rand Paul run for president and prevail are the exact sorts of supporters. Sarah Palin has the same kind of supporters. They're passionate. They're not just, mildly interested in him and his leadership. They're passionate about him. So I think he has more leeway on the national stage to say things like this, which are, I think inside the political conventions viewed as very provocative and dangerous. But I think Rand Paul is on such firm, solid ground with his base of supporters that he might be the only person on the stage, on the national political stage, who can raise these sorts of things. And I have to give him the benefit of the doubt that these are deeply held views he has, and he has every right to articulate them.
Let's talk a little bit about, and we're talking, by the way, with Nicolle Wallace, former communications chief for George W. Bush, senior advisor for the McCain Palin ticket, and Morning Joe panelist. Let's talk a little bit about the delay in Obamacare. Again, the employer mandate once again delayed by Obama, and some say that's not. And this is for small businesses, and some say that that's a precursor to the entire employer mandate being delayed for 2 or 3 years for everybody, because they don't want to suffer the ill effects of 80 million people losing their health insurance in over the summer, getting the notices, or in September and October. So I'm sure he will delay it. I mean, is this something the Republicans need to jump on, even more than they're doing? And do they need to bring out more people who, have lost their oncologists, whose kids can't get into the cancer hospitals anymore, the disaster stories that are out there, the horror stories of people who can't afford $12,000 deductibles? Do they need to trot them out and really pound away at that?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is no laughing matter. I think there are a lot of things in our politics that sadly enough become a comedy. They're such a disaster, it just becomes comical. This is not one of them. I mean, people's health care, and I think most people with kids would say that their children's health care, if something happens to your kid gets sick, you want to be able to have access to all the best doctors, all the best tests. And it's not just a matter of your access and your coverage becoming worse, which is what's happening. It's a matter of uncertainty. And there's nothing more terrifying than uncertainty when it comes to your family's health care. And that's what this law has done. That's what all the changes that they keep making by fiat. I mean, these are changes that the legislature has actually passed some changes. Republicans have taken the lead on this that have made the terrible law somewhat less terrible in some instances. But these are changes being directed by and ordered by and in an arbitrary manner implemented by the executive branch of the government. So this is not just a political debacle. This is a terrifying situation for anyone, for everyone who depends on, sort of some certainty when it comes to taking care of themselves and their families.
And that's everybody, right?
That's everybody, right?
Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing that is it's not a political opportunity to punish the other party. It's a political opportunity to elevate our own by being the adults in the room, by offering solutions, by bringing security and certainty to the situation. So I think our party has not just a political opportunity to draw a contrast between a president and his party who got behind a disastrous a healthcare overhaul and the insertion of the federal government into the delivery of the most sort of important and precious sorts of services that any family ever turns to, and that's medical services and the services provided by a family doctor.
Right.
But our party has the opportunity to make it better. And that's the one that I'm looking for, and that's what I think we need to jump on.
Just very quickly, could you recall when President Bush ever did anything like this with either with one law, so many changes, or law after law, changing pre-existing laws like the welfare reform, and we have Jonathan Turley saying this is an imperial presidency that the founding fathers feared.
I mean, George W. Bush would never in a million years have contemplated doing something so divisive without bipartisan support. That's the
You mean the bill itself?
The bill itself. President Bush did some things that I think had large political repercussions in his own party and then in the other. And I think he was, I think that's why he's so happy to have stepped out of public life now, because he left it all on the field, as I know he would say. But when he passed education reform at the beginning of his presidency, and I know that has some Republican detractors, but he did that with the support of Senator Ted Kennedy. When he passed tax cuts, Max Baucus or other, moderate Democrats, I'm not sure we have any more of those, were always at the signing ceremonies. When he passed Medicare Part D, which again I know was controversial with Republicans, but it was what my boss believed was right. He did so with bipartisan support. So when President George W. Bush did difficult, big things that changed and in some cases expanded the role of government, and again I know this wasn't always popular with Republicans, with your peeps, he did so with bipartisan support. And for a guy who is such a professorial kind of president like Obama to have not done his own homework about how you usher in these sorts of reforms with the least amount of upheaval to the public, it's really shocking, and the wreckage will go on for a long time.
Hey, listen, Nicolle, really a pleasure talking to you, and it was a pleasure meeting you, and say hello to Joe for me, and appreciate you coming on.
I hope you're back soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. That's Nicolle Wallace, ladies and gentlemen, former communications chief for George W. Bush. I love the way she says George W. Bush. Even though we know who she's talking about, it's just I don't know her well enough to know if it's that's how she always does it out of respect, but I have a feeling that's it. Anyway, we're coming back. Our panel, we're going to talk about this and a lot more with Rick Unger of Forbes magazine, and David Yonkman, Republican strategist, joins us right here on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.
The Steve Malzberg